of my hosts had me meet George Solo at his house, and it was kind of interesting. I think he said he had never met me, so I went to his house a couple times, and they talked about basically positive representation to Liberia in other areas because I was looking at doing business there, and that had been a model in the past. So I think things are pretty misrepresented the other day. When I was asked to give money, it was for kind of like an application fee, background check fee, those kind of things. It wasn't for necessarily favor. It came down to the point where he asked for a personal loan in December. He always seemed to be short on money. Talked about struggles paying his mortgage back in the U.S. Had money sent to his wife to help him. Said it was kind of helping the cause. Asked my opinion again on agriculture, knowing that I knew some of those things. Asked me for other potential ambassadors because he said he was kind of putting together, or not counselors, because he's putting together a team in Europe. I brought forth another guy who ended up spending months in Liberia, lost a fair amount of money actually to get out of the country. I ended up having to borrow money from someone that lived in Liberia just to get home, which is a pretty sad situation.
How did that
Um,
happen?
well, because again, I think you get drawn along a lot. Like things are supposed to happen, but they never happen, right? And that's kind of a pattern I've seen in Liberia compared to other areas. It's always like next week it's going to come, right? It's next week it's going to show. It's a difficult place to do business, right? It's a place sought after for so much hope in the future or so much potential, or they use the term virgin lands or all these things like that to an investor is not a good thing. You never want to be first in a lot of situations. But the relationship with George was a lot of phone calls, a lot of texts, a lot of back and forth, specifically talking about this grant that I brought forth a lot of companies with written proposals, which I shared, which was kind of an embarrassment, frankly, to your country because that wasn't even a real grant. And these are some pretty large companies and connections that I had. Um, that was kind of the gist of the conversation. It was represented to be something it wasn't, and something I really wasn't even looking for, to be frank. It was again something out of the goodness of my heart. It was a non-paying job in a yet another area. It wasn't necessarily what I was looking for.
Joe sort of told me that he doesn't know you.
That would be
You
a
said that to
lie.
me. You said,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really don't know him.
Well, I even met his wife, and his money was sent to his wife in Minnesota, and his good friend in Minnesota, who he's consulting business partners with. So I think if I was to deflect, I probably wouldn't go with the I don't know somebody. I probably think of something else. I mean, I introduced him to a lot of business people, and let's talk about what their impressions were of him. Just a couple of weeks before, because I was thinking about going back to Liberia, I actually introduced him to a CEO of a multinational corporation with offices in Miami, the UK, Dubai, and they're looking at an African presence. And this is a quote from his text message. He goes, "I'm very unimpressed by Mr. Solo. He seems very empty in his talk, lacked real knowledge. Frankly, he turned me away from even considering Liberia. The process as a system seemed not genuine. There's no written agenda. I was not impressed. I was not impressed at all by him or the opportunity. He picked somewhere else. Does that company probably does 100 million a year, which I don't know. That'd probably be a pretty big company in Liberia, right? George asked me to bring forth business opportunities, and this was a good one. And I knew that this guy was looking to expand into Africa. And so I thought a kind thing to do would be to include Liberia in that mix. And he acted like he was going to get him meetings with the vice president, the president, roll out the royal carpet. I have text messages to show that. But as he was explaining in other areas where he looked at legitimate opportunities, they gave him written incentive programs, right? Written things when you're bringing jobs and you're investing 20 to 50 million in a factory, right? Something to make it attractive. None of that stuff was paid forth in Liberia, right? Just promises of meetings, promises of this. There isn't a system or process in place to recruit a large employer, and that's why you don't have them, right? A legitimate employer. So when they're looking at factories in Miami and the United States is giving them $77 million because they're a legitimate company, and Liberia is giving you a text message, It doesn't look very good, right? These
Listen,
people talk to
gentlemen,
other people too, right? They are based in London. They're based in Dubai. They have a factory in China. They have a factory, I believe, in Turkey. They have a big facility going up completely robotic in Miami, Florida, in the expensive districts there. Even, looking at Liberia is a pretty big deal, right? But that dream is gone, and anyone associated with him, I'm sure he's telling the story, right?
how did he
Well,
take money from you?
he's done everything. First of all, there is a application fee, which is fine, that he collected in cash around this time in August, when I met with him, which is no big deal, right? Excuse me. He had me submit my resume, a cover letter, a copy of my passport, and this application fee to help assist with some costs. No big deal. Um, Crazy enough, I heard nothing from him after just a couple meetings for a period of time, and kind of wondered what happened with the money, with the process. And I reached out to him again in October, and that's when he said that that particular area wasn't going to work. Would I consider somewhere else? And plus, he also alluded to the fact that I underpaid the application fee compared to others. Okay, which is fine. The loan was for another matter. In December, he said he was running low on cash. His appointment had been delayed. He was getting ready to move. All his things would get reimbursed. The system worked on reimbursements. I have copies of all these text messages, everything. What people don't realize is I keep everything. And he asked for a 7,500 personal loan at that point in time to help him and his family, and that through his reimbursements, he'd pay me back very short order, like right after the first of the year. Clearly, he didn't pay me back, defaulted on the loan, and we're pursuing that, in a number of legal venues. Now that I realize that the entire thing was just a lie and a complete waste of everyone's time. Okay, not to mention the money I spent with putting together these proposals, bringing forth these companies for a fake grant, international farming companies, agriculture companies. Again, all who figured out the grant was fake. Again, I didn't say a lot because I'm classy, and classy people don't need to, bring things to the attention like that. But let's just say a lot of very big agricultural companies learned that there was a very fraudulent grant when they were reaching out, trying to figure out these dollars and why things weren't coming together when it was described otherwise. Would I ever do business in Liberia? No, I wouldn't. It's not just that reason, it would be other reasons too. Maybe we should understand why people don't invest there, right? Why things aren't going the way they are. And I think that if I help understand that, that would be good for you, right? And we could talk about, why master planning, what other countries are doing with minerals, what things are doing, and why they bypass. And I think that's probably the best use of your time rather than just rehashing, losses, right? And you can spend your time going after losses, or you can just move on to real legitimate opportunities, which I've chose to do. Successful people flee unpredictable environments. And Liberia is very unpredictable. I met with a lot of government agencies. I saw your processes, all those things. And the processes don't add up and compare to what you'd see in other areas. So I believe Liberia is high risk, and if they want to attract legitimate dollars, they need to reduce that risk. So then long term investors, rather than speculative players who only gamble because maybe they have fewer options, maybe they don't have legal money, maybe something's a little bit off, they would be attractive in that situation. The areas that are successful have real structure, real planning, and elimination of waste, right? And so while your neighbors thrive, Liberia continues to miss opportunities because it's unstable, it has outdated structures, and I think that's why it's not attractive to me to invest there or participate. And so I brought forth companies, one in Omaha, Nebraska, a few in Europe, for this that will now never do business in Liberia because of this experience under any circumstances, because I keep working with them in other areas because they wasted their time, right? So one bad apple can ruin more relationships, and this is your guy out, representing you in Europe, right? Right now, is the government itself, or they have to give a couple bad deals in order to get better deals, to get better deals, to get better deals. Does that make sense?